Wanted to talk about your paranormal investigator character. I love those books. And
Yay.
again, I read pretty broadly in a lot of genres. So the paranormal investigator sort of mystery type thing is not unique. And a lot of them, when you read them, there's a certain formula and template that you can often expect to follow. So if once the story starts to fall into that pattern, you can kind of not necessarily guess every turn, but you can guess
Mhm.
that what's coming in the next act, kind of thing. Now, when I read yours, I almost didn't. I wouldn't have thought of it in that vein if you hadn't defined it on the cover. So, like just reading the books themselves, it felt like either that you're aware of that pattern and purposely sidestepped it, or you just kind of blasted through it just in the mode of your storytelling. Was there a purposeful attempt to take it in a different direction, make it deeper, make it something more?
Yeah, I tried. I think that um, one of the one of the things that makes writing a series easy is because some of the legwork is done for you already. If you have a series of books about the same character, then you've already been in that world. It's already been created for you. The character, you know the character like a person. But one of the hard things about a series is not falling into that trap that you mentioned of having it be sort of formulaic, so that every story happens the same way, and you know that the character's always going to be okay, and
Right.
that this is always going to that we're going to introduce the bad guy, and then your detective's going to come along and solve the case, and everything's going to go back to normal. And the the way that I tried to get around it, first of all, was to have different, because especially with cosmic horror, you also, because it is a somewhat, because it is a subgenre,
Yes.
and it's a categorical subgenre that certain things happen that make it a cosmic horror story. I didn't want to, if I could avoid it, have repetitive uh, storytelling there. So one of the things that was important to me was to evolve her over the course of the books, have her change and grow with each experience. And I also wanted the nature of the cosmic horror to be different, um, which would involve, you can still use certain tenets that make something a cosmic horror story, but change the nature of the story. So in some stories, the bad thing comes to our dimension. In some stories, they have to go to where the bad things are, and I just sort of build from there, uh, and try to see how that would cause her to evolve as a character. I had read a couple of uh, James Patterson books, like I'm trying to think of the name of it now. It's just completely slipped my mind. But his detective changes over time. In some ways, he starts out sort of angry and bitter, and mellows out in some ways. In some ways he gets more angry and more determined to accomplish certain things, but he changes as a character, and his life situation changes. It isn't always the same uh, circumstances happening. And with Kathy, and this always kind of amazes me, because people seem to really respond to her. They seem to really like her. I didn't want to make her perfect, because I think a lot of thrillers fall into that problem, that they want to show that this woman is, smart and capable. So they make her smart and capable and sexy and built like a Barbie doll,
Right.
and
Right.
she has this one flaw that makes her, less than perfect. But otherwise, she's like a superhuman, like a
Right.
Terminator, powering through these. And I didn't want that. There's also certain things, I think, in horror and thrillers, and there's certain things that have never been considered acceptable for the good guy if the good guy is a woman.
Mm-hmm.
You don't often, like, you'll often see the trope of a detective who's a drunk, but it's always a man.
Right. Right.
You don't see detectives who are drunks who are women.
Yeah.
And Kathy drinks. I mean, she's like a lunch drinker. She's like an alone drinker.
Yeah.
She's like I'm brushing my teeth with whiskey kind of drinker. And
Yeah.
uh, she's also, because I wanted her to be different. I wanted her to be able to do the same things that a male detective would do, and like she doesn't have a lot of social graces. She she pisses people off a lot. She isolates people with how she says things and what she says to them. She's insecure about the scar on her face.
Mm-hmm.
So she doesn't. It never really occurs to her to try to use her sexiness or her looks in any way, because she assumes people are always staring at her because of her scar.
Right.
It's little things like that. And the one thing that seems to surprise readers, although, and it's probably my fault that I didn't do a better job putting this forth, is that she's a little suicidal.
Mm-hmm.
She's a little on the edge. Like she's been through a lot, and it's one of those things where she's not actively trying to die, but if she does, okay, then that's one less problem, one less thing to worry about, and people don't see her that way. They see her as incredibly strong and incredibly resourceful, and I kind of like that. And I think she's become, over the books, less suicidal, but more pessimistic.
Mm-hmm.
I think by the time we get to the fourth book, she feels like she's on borrowed time. And maybe for the first time ever, that's a problem for her. She doesn't just want to... It's not a case of like, well, if this thing, if this monster, whatever this monster is this time, if it gets to me, okay, whatever. Like, it actually matters, because she over the course of the books, her relationship with her boyfriend deepens, and over the course of the books, I think her brother gets into her head more about, you may not be all that much different than I am. Because for readers who don't know, her brother's a serial killer, and he's incarcerated in this hospital. And even at his best, even at his nicest, at his most brotherly and loving, he's still a bad person. He's not just, like I like to think he's not just this sort of cardboard cutout villain.
Right.
But he's more complicated than that. Like, he loves his sister as much as he is capable of loving another person. But there's something very wrong with him. And his idea of love is more like, I want you to be like me so I don't feel alone. And she doesn't want to be like him. But she's starting to realize that, given the work that she does and how it has affected her over time, that she may not be as different than him as she would like to be. And I think those are the kind of things maybe that make each book a little bit different, is that there is a progression instead of essentially a Monster of the Week book.